joining us now is Carl Yurisic. Carl, welcome to Crawford County Outdoors for the first time.
Glad to be here.
Mike Polk. Mike, welcome to you too. And I got the biggest kick out of going with you guys last week on that bird hunt. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I had watched one time years ago, and being up close and being there with the camera and trying to be involved in everything really was awesome. I got the biggest kick out of it. Talk about the sport in general. I mean, I know it's got like hundreds and hundreds and maybe 1,000+ years of history with the sport, but talk about it in general. Carl, maybe you want to start with that?
Well, yeah, I can give you my opinion on it, and let me first say we were pleased to have you. We enjoyed it, and Mike and I enjoy sharing what we do because we really enjoy doing it. And when we find people or with like interest, why it's our pleasure to take them along and kind of show them the way the sport has evolved and what it's doing now and how it's done now, and dispel maybe some rumors that stigma that people have of the sport that's really not exactly true.
But I had to laugh for a second.
Well, let's jump into that. What do people say? I mean, what do you hear? You know, that's tell me.
It's the oldest sport in the in the world, actually.
But it's viewed as a blood sport. Yeah. It's viewed as a blood sport, and a lot of that came from the way it was handled, not so much in this country, but in other countries, and even during medieval times. Depended on the caste of the people, what they were allowed to fly. Kings could fly eagles and gerfalcons. Knights and royalty could fly the smaller falcons, and cooks and normal people could fly, soaring type hawks or goshawks. But it wasn't done so much as sport, except in the hierarchy. It was more done to catch food and cook it. That's what it was for. So they kind of did it any way they could, and it was almost like having a gun. It was there for a purpose, and the purpose was to get food.
So maybe
that's
if you
not
fast
the way
forward
we do it in the United States anymore. It's done as a sport. It's done for fun, and what you catch and how you catch is not as important as enjoying doing it. And we tried to show you a little bit of that as we went, and as I've told different people, these birds are doing what they would be doing whether we're there or not. We're just a willing participant. And if we didn't catch that bird and that bird was in the wild, it would be hunting the same thing, the same way, maybe in the same area. Only thing is we wouldn't be there to enjoy it and see it. So that's the way Mike and I kind of look at the sport. It's something that we do, but these birds don't do anything different than they would be doing in the wild on their own.
Let's talk about the birds for a second. Mike, your bird is a red-tailed hawk.
Yes.
And Carl, yours is a
Mine is
Harris?
a captive-bred Harris hawk. Initially, it comes from California, Sonoma Desert, Mexico, parts of Oklahoma. It was captive-bred in State College, PA, by a licensed breeder there.
Okay.
I'm her second owner. I got her off of a fellow down in Slippery Rock, and she's 3 years old, so I'm her second owner. So
would you see a Harris hawk in the wild around here?
No,
but you probably likely would see a red-tailed hawk in the wild around here.
They're abundant in this area. They're a real common bird. That's why they let apprentices have them for the first 2 years. As an apprentice, I could only take an American kestrel or a red-tailed hawk. So
well, let's get to that first too. An apprentice, master, is that the word that you used before? Both of you, describe that if you would.
Well, in order to get into the sport of falconry, you have to pick a sponsor up. So I'd pick someone like Carl up that signs for you. They take total responsibility for you and your husband.
Help you with your training, about the sport and how to train a bird, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
They help you with the husbandry of the bird, and there's a lot of information. Like you say, you start out with not knowing very much and learn very quickly of what to do and what not to do.
Well, what's it take to become an experienced master at the sport? What's that involve?
You got to be old.
Okay.
It starts out. It used to be you had to be 16. Now I think it's 12.
You can be 12 years old.
And you have to spend the first 2 years as an apprentice. In those 2 years, you have to have kept a bird for 12 months.
Okay.
That's the big one. So if you lose your bird, you got to start all over again. So you may be an apprentice for 5 or 6 or 7 years, depending on how well you're able to fill the specifications of what it takes to move into the general class. Let's assume that you have kept your bird for 12 months and you passed the test and everything else is as it needs to be. Then in 2 years you move into the general class. Okay, in the general class you're allowed to do a few things different. You have a little more latitude. You don't need a sponsor. You're in that for 5 years, and then you move into the master class. The master class allows you to keep, well, in this particular case, if I wanted a golden eagle, I could take one if a state offered permits under depredatory conditions. Then I could go out and get a golden eagle. A general falconer can't do that. So there are some things that I can do as a master falconer that a general falconer can't do, but I don't think that step is as big as it is from an apprentice to a general. So basically, there's 3 classes, and that's the way it's done.
Now, Mike,
and
how did...
if you let your permit expire, then you have to start all over again.
Oh, okay.
So if you take a few years off, that's fine, but you got to keep your permit up and running and current, because if you don't, or you move to another state, then you have to start all over again at the apprentice class.
Which agency do you work that out with? Is that with the Game Commission, or is that?
Well, right now it's pretty much all done with the Pennsylvania Game Permission, but the federal people are involved with the Pennsylvania Game Commission too.
Okay.
It used to be we carried 2 permits, one federal permit, one state permit, and they both worked with each other, but nobody was really in charge, and it wasn't really a smooth transition. So now the state has pretty much, they run it, and then if the feds need to know anything, they contact the state, and that's the way it's done. But a few years ago, the feds set up mandatory rules and laws, and the state had the option of accepting them, not accepting them, or making them more stringent. In most cases, most states just said, they look pretty good to us, so we'll go with what the feds come up with. And then, of course, the district game protector has to come out, inspect your facilities, make sure everything's in order, and he's the guy that you see. Now, that doesn't mean you might not see a federal officer occasionally.
Okay.
But normally, it's not real good news if you see one, but sometimes they're in the area and they'll pop in and maybe inspect your facilities or whatever, and they obviously have the right to do that, and occasionally we'll see them. But most of the time it's your district game protector, and I've dealt with 5 or 6 of them in my career, and most of the time there's they understand the rules and laws, and it's a job that they have, and my job is to be compliant, so we work with each other. And some are a little more proactive falconry. Fortunately, the one we have right now is a young district game protector, very conscientious of rule applications and so on, but he's a young fella and he's more involved in it. He's more interested in it, so I enjoy working with him. He's a pleasant addition. Not that the one previous to that wasn't. He'd been a district game protector for a long time, was a great guy, but he had a lot of other irons in the fire and a lot of things that he viewed as maybe a little bit more important than the one falconer he had in Crawford County, which was me at the time. So I understand that, but they're the governing body. They're the guys that come and make sure that everything is right.
Well, Carl, your bird came by way of domestically bred. I don't know. That's probably the right way to describe it. Captively bred. But now, Mike, describe yours. How did it come to being your?
We actually wild caught the bird.
How does that happen? How does that work?
There's several ways you can do it. I caught her with a pigeon harness. It's a little leather harness that you put on a pigeon. It's got nooses on it, and you ride around and find one sitting in a tree somewhere, a passage bird, what you have to take. So you make sure it's a passage bird, and then you set
Let me ask you to define that.
A passage bird is a first-year bird that doesn't have adult plumage.
Okay. And you can tell that by looking from a distance. Okay.
The first-year birds are all brown usually, you know what I mean, and they have really yellow eyes. After the first year, they get their red tail, and eyes get a little darker and that, so they're pretty easy to tell.
Okay.
And we just rode around and seen her sitting in a tree and set the trap, and within about 10 minutes she was down on it and thus began my falconry career.
So, is there any magic to a particular bird, a particular bird versus a different bird that one that's going to be?
Well,
can you tell?
You want to take one that doesn't have a lot of feather damage to it. That's not emaciated, obviously, because if it's sick, then it's going to be a problem when you get it home and try to take care of it. You want one that's kind of well-rounded all the way around. It's got good feathers. It's got good color to the feet and the beak and that stuff. It's clear eyes, no cloudiness in the eyes, and it just a healthy bird. If you get a healthy bird, then you've got a good palate to start with.
But they do differ. They do differ. He referred to the bird as a passage bird, which it is, which means it was born April or May, and we caught it in September or October, so it's already had 3 months to learn how to hunt. It's already been successful, or it would have died. If that bird was taken out of the nest, it would be considered an eyas bird.
Yeah.
And it would always be considered an eyas bird. That means when it was taken, it was a baby. And it didn't have any training except what you gave it. Now, if that bird migrated once and came back and then was trapped, which technically you're not allowed to do, but if you did, it would be considered a haggard bird, which means it's over a year old. So you got an eyas, a passage, or a haggard. That's the 3 age brackets that all birds are, or captive bred in my case. And even in my case, even if it's captive bred, it could be an eyas bird, which means it's imprinted, it thinks that you're its parent, or if it's left with the parents in captivity for, say, 4 months, then it no longer thinks that I'm its parent, it knows it's a hawk, and it could be considered technically a passage bird, even though it's captive bred, because it's been left with its parents for 4 months. All those things have to do with how the bird reacts to training. And with his particular bird, some red tails are pretty tough to train. Other ones seem very open to it. And then there's everything in the middle. So you can be a great falconer and struggle with a bird, or you can be a new falconer and get lucky, or it can be anywhere in between. So you've got a real gamut, left and right. I think Mike fell somewhere in between. He got a bird that had some issues, but not anything dramatic, and he spent a lot of hard work and ended up reaping the benefits and had an extremely nice bird, and we had a lot of fun with it.
Now, I noticed both of you had a name for the bird, and it seemed to react in both cases, seemed to react to the name. Is that part of the deal?
Yeah, you name your bird. I mean, just like anything else that you're around, whether so much they react to the name that you give them or to the sound that they hear.
Okay.
She's whistle trained too. She'll come to the whistle just as fast as she comes to her name. I mean, it's part of the training.
I really think they do recognize your voice. Every day, my muse where I keep the bird is right out front of my kitchen window. Every day I open the window and yell her name, and she comes out. And that doesn't mean if somebody else yelled it, she wouldn't come out too. But I really believe she knows my name, and I know his bird recognized his voice.
Now, in both cases, you have a female bird. Does that matter? Does that make a difference?
The females are 20% larger than the males are, 20 or 30% larger than the males are. So, if you want to hunt rabbits, you always kind of want to take a little bit bigger of a bird. There's a little more grace when you're dealing with the weight of the bird and how they hunt with a female than there is a male.
Let's jump to our trip out in the field here recently, and first off, both of you impressed me knowing exactly how much the bird weighed. How the heck do you weigh a bird and whether or not it's going to hunt well based on its weight? Describe all that to me.
Well, when you get the bird, you take a base weight off of it. And
how do you weigh it? I mean, does it sit on a scale?
Yeah, it sits on a scale. It's part of the training. That's actually one of the first parts of the training is you teach the bird that it's got to sit on the scale to be fed or handled or anything of that nature. You take
the bird figures out pretty fast. Hey, the food's coming, so I'm going to do what I can.
It's the first step to going hunting. So they'll sit right on that scale till they get weighed because they know they're going in the box and then they're going to go out.
These birds are way smarter than people give them credit for. I took mine, and within probably 2.5 weeks, I was in the field with her. So that was from the time of being in a tree to her following along, hunting with us. in 3 weeks. You know, you can't do that with a dog, but you can do that with a bird really, really fast.
More like a year with the dog.
Yeah, it doesn't
I can speak
take
from
them,
experience on that one.
it doesn't take them long to figure out that, you know, what they have to do to get what they want, and they're pretty good at training us too, as far as that goes.
The bird itself, its natural interest in the hunt, but it figures out pretty quickly that you're going to help it with that.
Yeah, after a few trips in the field and they figure out that you're flushing things from the brush piles and things of that nature, they tend to follow along really closely and know the deal real fast.
I think folks will see in the video, I was able to get fairly close to you with the bird. Now, you were wearing a heavy glove over your arm and your forearm, which I imagine those talons, they look like they could do some pretty good damage to your skin if you didn't. Is that the point of that heavy glove?
Yeah, they can pierce your skin without any problem.
And you know that, Hal?
A little experience with that?
I've been there and done that a few times.
Well, there's a intimidation, you know, look about a bird of prey that you know, those long talons, that beak, and they have a pretty intense stare, you know, about them that pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
Any predator has that. That's part of being a predator. They need to be able to let the prey know that they mean business, and birds of prey can be intimidating. Mike and I kind of brush a lot of it off, and we're used to it. But you got to always remember they're a wild animal, and they have capabilities, and occasionally you're going to get between what you think is common sense and what they think is common sense, and you're going to end up on the low end of the totem pole, and it happens. I'm sure any wild animal trainers probably can take his shirt off and show you scratches or whatever. It's part of it. The common sense thing would be to make it a minimal thing and not, you know, not something that happens often. But every bird is capable, and you can't ever forget that. If you do, you're not doing yourself or the bird any justice.
The thing he's telling you is I've never seen him get a hole poked in him, and I've had several poked in me.
Well, that's because you've only known me for
I was going to say, is that the master thing? Is
Yeah,
that
it is, actually.
That happened a long time ago, the whole poker thing?
It's happened a lot.
Okay.
And most of the time, it's just pure stupidity on my part. But
No, it's an experience thing too. You'll know when to, you know, in my first year, you just don't know the characteristics of the bird all the time. And after the second year, you know when not to put your hand where it shouldn't be, and, you know.
I was kind of hoping you'd tell me if I was getting too close with the camera to get a close-up of that bird, and it didn't seem threatened by me. It didn't seem intimidated by what was going on. I think it was all about the business of the day, and we're going to go hunting.
some species aren't that forgiving. Cooper's hawks, goshawks, I would be real reluctant to take anyone new in the field and let them get too close without possibly goggles and maybe some sort of a hard hat or something on. It sounds a little goofy, but you need that. With the two birds that you were with, we're very confident through experience that you weren't any kind of danger. It was, we just know them well enough, and they've never exhibited anything toward any of his children, my wife, anybody we've taken in the field. It's just not conducive to what they want, which is to go catch a rabbit. Now, I wouldn't want you holding one, you know. I mean, that's kind of stupid to say, but as long as you don't get between them and what they want, there's just no way anything bad's going to happen. And obviously, we didn't. While we were in the field, we kept pretty close track of what was going on and made sure that, you know, you weren't going to be in any kind of problem.
Now, Mike, your son Preston was along helping with. There was a lot of stomping on the brush piles to get the rabbits moving there. Also, wanted to mention we've never on our Crawford County Outdoor Series, which is we'll get to that at some point. We've never been on a rabbit hunt before. So working with your dog or
No, it's my dog.
Your dog Max.
Yeah, Max.
Max has it figured out pretty well. Max is a big goal, I guess, and he knows the drill. I think folks will see later on in the video that Max at the end got a little close to the bird as the bird was eating the rabbit at the end of the hunt, and the bird put Max, you know, reminded Max that this is my bird, or this I'm the bird, and this is my hunt here, and, you know, leave me alone. And Max didn't seem to be injured by that, or didn't seem to be upset about that. But his hunting was great. How was his training coming along with?
I kind of bought them both up together.
Okay.
I bought the dog
Okay.
for that specific purpose of rabbit hunting with the birds. So when I had them both together, they kind of got introduced at the same time as far as that went. And it didn't take him long to figure out that, you know, he was hunting for her and that was the deal. Every time he hears the bells go off, he's wherever she is. So.
My bird had a learning curve with the dog. It didn't want anything to do with the dog. When the dog got loose, she wanted to go somewhere else, and she'd never been around or hunted with a dog. But when I first got her, she didn't like the lawnmower. She didn't like the school bus. She didn't like a two-cycle motor. She didn't like a chainsaw. As time progressed and she found out all those things weren't going to be a problem, she went the same way with the dog. In a matter of, what'd you say, like 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
Probably 2 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks, she realized that that's the guy chasing the rabbits and I need to stay with him. And she'll flare up a little bit at the dog, and like his bird did, but she has no fear of it. She realizes that it's part of the package, and they just learn real quick.
Now the Beagle was in and around and over and down, and doesn't, I'm accustomed to my Springer Spaniel that moves very fast and covers a lot of ground, and the Beagle's much more deliberate, and you can nose right to the ground and up and over and around, and I think folks will see in the video, the dog's a hard worker, for checking out,
he's
tight areas.
Pretty good worker. He's got his problems too sometimes. He's a young dog yet. He's only a year and a half old, so he's still learning, but he's a good time.
So as we started down into the brushy area, there was, I think it was an area that had been timbered not too awful long ago, and there was a bunch of kind of like treetops and things, and so of course for those who spend any time in the outdoors, it gets a lot of tangles and things in and around there, which probably makes a pretty good habitat for a rabbit to hide in. In fact, a lot of things hide in an area like that, called the slashings or whatever. And, as you started down in, you had the bird that walked with you, and then talk about the bells for a second and how it was connected to you, and you let go and it, up in the tree.
Okay. Well, the bells are connected to anklets, and then I'm holding, they call Alamari jesses, which are connected to a leash, and then again are connected to a Sampo swivel that are connected to my glove, or gauntlet, as you'd call it in falconry, and you use the bells for locating the bird in the woods. There's a high-pitched bell and a low-pitched bell. They're two different, tones. That way you can hear the bird when it moves in the trees.
So as you release the bird, it's free. I mean, if it wants to go to wherever it's going.
If you don't do your homework right that morning or have it right to wait, it's free. It can go anywhere it wants. The anklets and the jesses are made to come out and fall apart. That way the bird doesn't have anything that it could possibly hang it from a tree or anything of that nature.
And it's a common mistake for an apprentice falconer to lose his bird. And it happens because it's either not properly trained or the weight isn't right. And that's why it's a specification in the laws that you have to keep that bird for 1 year to move on to the next class. They know that it's not easy to do. And I was there when Mike turned his bird loose for the first time, and we both had a lump in our throat because he put a lot of hard work in, and he's going to let it go, and from this point on, it's on its own. It went very smooth, and I don't think there's been over 1 or 2 times that we've even considered that, we may not get the bird back. And the longer we hawked, the more times we went out, the more confident we became, and it just wasn't an option. We were going to come home with our bird, unless an accident happened or something that was beyond our control. But the first couple of times around, it was a little bit concerning, hair-raising, because...
I have to make an apology, too, about one thing. As we were going along, I didn't catch it, but apparently a raindrop got on the lens of the camera. And when it dried, it left a nice smudge, right, kind of at an angle. So as you see the footage, you'll see a nice smudge the whole time, which I didn't catch. Looking for a little viewfinder, didn't catch that. But as you moved along now, I try to get some close-ups of the bird in the tree, which when you really zoom in, there'll be a lot of shaking, so I apologize for that in advance. But I think you could see the bird really watching what was going on, watching you guys, watching the dog, and its head, you could see its head going back and forth frequently. And then as you'd move a little bit away from it, it would just maybe ask you, what happens then? I could see what was happening, but describe it if you would.
Well, she's constantly trying to stay up with the hunt because she knows that the action's going to happen wherever, like what you said, we're stepping on brush piles. She knows the closer she is to you, the better chance she has of catching the game. If she hangs back too far, a lot of the times the game will flush and she'll be out of position, so
you can tell a lot by the posturing of the bird, if what it's got in its mind. In fact, with a little experience, and Mike has come a long way in this respect too, for the short time that he's been doing it, we both of us can almost tell you what the bird's going to do before it does it. Just by the posture, by the action, by the way it sits, and it sounds a little funny, but I'm sure if you were talking to someone that was training horses, they could look out in the pasture and say, that one out there in the back, there's something wrong with its left foot or what. You and I would never see it. They'd see it in a heartbeat. With our birds, we can tell almost immediately. In fact, one of the things Mike and I do when we turn them loose to go hunting, we wait about 5 or 10 minutes and we just watch what they do in their actions, and we can almost guarantee that they're either ready to go, or it's not going to be a good day, or it's going to be a little bit lazy, she's not interested, or this bird's ready to hunt. And you can tell just by the posturing of the bird, the way it acts, the way it sits, and it's not all that hard to do.
Was your bird ready to hunt? I mean, it's to me as an out, as a.
If you get them out of the car, like I showed you, and you carry them down in the woods, and you cast them in a tree, and the first thing they do is turn around and face the opposite direction and don't look at you, it's not going to be a good day. No. If you toss them in a tree and they turn around, and the first thing they do is lean forward, they're ready to go. They're waiting for you to make the first move.
And even during the hunting, we'll be chasing a dog and beating brush, and one of the two of us is almost always watching the bird. And if it's just kind of sitting there looking around, everything's fairly normal. If that bird leans over in a cocked position, there's a rabbit someplace, she sees it, and she's getting ready to go. You may not see it yet, the dog may not see it yet, but it's there, and you can tell, right?
Yeah.
You can tell.
Well, we don't recognize that
tell.
There was a rabbit there. It had moved earlier, and I just happened to be lucky to be in the right spot. And the bird and the dog and the rabbit all came together all at the same time. And on the first pass, the rabbit, I guess it was pretty lucky for the rabbit, ducked underneath a log, and the dog and the bird kind of ran almost into each other, and here comes the rabbit squirting out the other side. Yeah. But it was right back after that rabbit again, just kind of collected herself, and right back after the rabbit again. And then I think you'll see in the video just a few minutes later, it was lunchtime then for.
We had a successful hunt, but a lot of the times that doesn't happen. We'll hunt for 9 times out of 10. You'll get 7 or 8 slips a day, and you won't get anything. It's very, very, very rare do you get a rabbit that quick out of the chute. Like I said, 9 times out of 10 she misses. It happens with a red tail because they don't have a fast recovery time. Now with Harris hawk, they've got a faster recovery time. They're capable of making more slips on a.
But it wouldn't be much fun if you only went out for 15 minutes and then went home. So it's actually kind of nice that it takes a little longer sometimes to make a kill. And then you go from here to say Newcastle. It seems like there's a lot more rabbits down there. There's guys. It's easier for them. Up here, we work hard. Sometimes we'll work hours before we even see one. And then it runs for cover, goes down in a hole, and we don't even have a chance at it. But that's part of what we do up here.
Well, and another thing that really impressed me is when the bird finally had a hold of the rabbit and was going about its business of its reward. It didn't seem to care. You're feeding the dog and don't get your hand too close. I didn't get that sense at all. You were right. I mean, literally right there, and we're helping it. And the dog came by, and of course, there was one little incident with the dog, but I wasn't just more than a foot or two away with the camera, and the bird went on about eating the rabbit, and didn't seem to care too much about me being there. So
that just comes to good manning, I think. Not to if you're constantly with the bird and constantly doing things of that nature, they tend not to mind so much. But she's a good bird.
That's part of the training, and that's where a lot of people make mistakes. They want to get in a tug of war with them, and red tails, or Harris hawks, they'll use their feet to protect what they've got. Cooper's hawks, goshawks, they'll leave it and fly right at you. So you want to eliminate that possibility. So what you got to do in training is enforce on them that you're not going to, under any circumstances, steal anything from them, without at least replacing it with something equivalent. And they get to a point where they have no fear. I mean, they understand that you're part of it, and if you're anywhere near them, all you're trying to do is help them. And once they understand that, then you're no threat. No threat.
Well, the second hunt with your bird, now, actually it was several hours. I don't think it'll show that way in the video, but it was several hours until finally the hunt was going. Yours was more like minutes, a couple minutes. Your bird was right on the, I didn't even realize there was a rabbit there, and swoop, 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 the bird's down and dives into the high grass in the field. And so I followed you. We went over there, and yep, got a rabbit.
That's got to do a lot with the difference in birds. His is more of an aerial bird than what mine is. That's got to do with the recovery time of the bird. The red tails, they're made for hitting ground quarry and hitting it hard, and it takes them a lot longer to get back up. His bird, they're a parabuto, so they're a more maneuverable bird.
His bird flies at, what do you fly yours at, 40?
42 and a half.
See, mine flies at 32.
Ounces.
Yeah,
It's
so,
weight.
so
Okay.
there's 10 ounces less there and a bigger wingspan and a bigger tail. So that they're a lighter bird, they can get up and fly quicker, they're a little bit more aerial, but they're actually a smaller bird. But if you look at the two of them, it looks like a bigger bird, it's only because the feathers are longer.
Okay.
But if you took all the feathers off, his would be a pretty chunky looking bird, and mine would be a pretty small bird. So obviously being lighter, it can move quicker. And they are noted for being a little more aerial, and that particular flight that you got was not exactly the normal for that bird. She had a good flight, but it's not always that way. Sometimes she'll bounce 5 or 6 times and not catch it, and then sometimes she doesn't catch it at all. In that particular case, she bobbed over it once and caught it the second go around, which was good for her and lucky for us that we were able to get it.
I felt pretty lucky to just happen to be in the right spot 2 times to see the.
Well, you bring us good luck. We'd like you to come with us all the time.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to come along. That was awesome. I like I said, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect, but that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I got a huge kick out of that. So.
Well, we're glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can do it again
You're
sometime.
more than welcome to come anytime you want.
Well, Mike Polk, thank you. Thank you for
Appreciate
telling
it.
the story and for inviting me along, Carl. Appreciate it very much, and
More than welcome.
for the lesson.
Enjoyed it.
This was tremendous. Well, thanks for your help.